I tell my kids all the time, bro, nobody cares. Nobody cares. Like,
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of On the Mic, which used to be called Behind the Mix. But thank you to all my supporters in my community telling me to change it, so I changed it. On today, we have a gentleman with us who has accomplished a lot of things, and one thing in particular that I am very excited to have him on about. He's a four-time Grammy-nominated engineer. He's an educator, a teacher as well. He's worked with many different people, such as people like, Bad Boy, Diddy, Mary J. Blige, Nas, Nelly Furtado. I'm trying to remember. And the list goes on and on and on. Okay, so I bring to the stage none other than Frank Socorro.
thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Frank, what's going on with you? How are you?
Chilling, man. Just here, enjoying the lovely weather. My kids are on spring break, so
And,
daddy daycare vibes.
and you're in Florida?
I'm in Miami. Yes.
Man, so the weather down there is perfect. I mean, I'm in
Where
Philadelphia.
Where are you?
I'm in Philadelphia,
You're
so it's
you're
it's
Oh,
it's
you're in PA.
it's nice here. It's very nice here today, actually, very nice. But it's not
Oh, this is a good time of year for you guys.
it's not Miami nice though. So it's not Miami.
Okay.
This
I
is
mean, I
the-
grew up in New York, so I know like this time of year is like it's kind of special in the north. You can pull the shorts out, wearing a t-shirt. Nighttime, you put on that hoodie, stay fresh. I know. That's springtime.
Yeah. So Frank, real quick, before we get into any questions, can you introduce yourself? Let the people know who you are, where you're from, what you do.
So my name is Frank Socorro, as we've already stated, and I've been an engineer for almost 22 years now. Um, I grew up in New York City. At the tender age of 19, I went to Full Sail to study audio. I graduated and moved to Miami afterwards, and have been here ever since. Like I was mentioned, I've been nominated for a few Grammys. I've had the fortune to work with some really amazing artists along the way. At one point in my career, I became an educator, and I still am. I currently, give private classes, still teach group classes, and actually work with the local SAE campus in helping their students find their footing within the industry after they graduate. So,
Cool, great. And you being an educator is the thing that I'm actually most excited about because I feel like in this digital age of YouTube and tutorials and tips and examples and the top five things you need to know, in this kind of era, you tend to appreciate those who are actually educators, those who really do speak the language of music, who understand the nuances of everything, from personnel to the gear to the actual sonics of what's going on. So I really do appreciate that.
thank you.
So what actually made you become an engineer? Like, how did you said, you went to school, Full Sail, and now you help out at SAE. But how did you actually become an engineer? Like, what was the thing that was like, what, I want to I want to be an engineer? Because I'll be honest, like, I'm a musician and a producer, and I'm an engineer, but I never was like, what, when I grow up, I'm gonna be an engineer. That's not the
Right.
first
I don't
job
think anybody.
kind of
Yeah,
thing.
I don't think anybody's like, I want to be an engineer. Honestly, for me, um, production is a love of mine. It's not something I do. Like, it's not something that's I've produced records, but it's not like my main thing I do. I do love it. I just didn't pursue it as hard as I did engineering. So I'm a way better engineer than I am a producer, and I have no shame in saying that. So For me, it was production in the beginning. So I grew up, and I tell this story. At the time, I grew up in a house with two DJs. I grew up in my grandmother's house for the most part. I had two older uncles. They were only slightly older than me, so they were almost like big brothers. And they were both, aspiring DJs, and they were amateur DJs. And so I grew up in this house where there was always records, there was always, DJing, and there was equipment. Um, and that led kind of started like the technical path for me as far as like being around equipment and connecting stuff. And even though it's really basic, like anybody can connect two turntables to a mixer. I mean, let me go back. It is basic, but I would do it, and then people would be like, "I don't know how you know how to make all this stuff work," and I'd be like, "Bro, it's like three cables. Like it's not that deep." But I realized then that it's like not everybody has that aptitude of being able, like, being interested in just like, you know what I'm saying, like doing that stuff. And then the thing that really changed everything for me was one day was in the summer. I'll never forget it. And my uncle brings home a piece of gear, which was a sampler that would connect to your turntable rig, to your DJ rig, and it was like, I think it was like 4 seconds. It was like something stupid. It was just enough to make a loop. And I remember him showing me like, look, you can like play the first part of the track and loop it, and then it just plays over and over. And I was like, this is how people make beats. And then from then on, I was just like, you know what I'm saying? Like, this is how people make records. So I spent a lot of time playing with that, and then quickly realizing how garbage it was. It was like a Gemini sample. It was awful. It was noisy and whatever. All the bass would cut out. It was bad. But I quickly realized how bad it was, and then how like I would need other things and knowledge. So I started like looking into studying this. That same uncle introduced me to a school in New York called IAR, which is called the Institute of Audio Research. I don't even know if it still exists. And I was actually like in the process of applying there when my mom, who had moved to Florida, contacted me and was like, "Hey, why don't you move to Florida?" And I was like, "I don't want to move to Florida." And she said if I moved to Florida, she'd buy me a car. So of course I packed my bags and moved to Florida. What 18-year-old, 19-year-old kids not gonna want their parents to buy them a car? Um, so I moved to Florida. I started working just regular odd jobs, and then I was like, you know what? I want to go back to this thing that I was trying to figure out. Um, and somebody was like, I was talking to somebody about it one day, and somebody was like, "Why don't you go to Full Sail?" And I was like, "What the hell is Full Sail?" And they gave me the information. I called up. I never even visited the campus. Like I talked to the recruiter on the phone, and I was like, "Sign me up." I sent the $500 in via mail for the application fee, and the first time I went to the campus was my first day of class. So I was pretty like adamant
Let-
about actually doing that.
So let me ask you this, because I was even in a clubhouse room the other night, and it was a topic going on about how important is education when it comes to the music industry and engineering. I have my own take on it, but I would love to hear you going through, Full Sail, and you actually becoming an educator. I kind of see, because of your history, but how much do you think it is actually useful and applied nowadays in the music industry?
So here's a really interesting thing about that question is that when people ask me that question, I'm like, it's absolutely not required. Like you don't. I have a really good friend who became an engineer who never went to school. Like he learned in a studio. Here is the one issue with that though, is that he was able to get an opportunity at a studio because he had a good friend who was really cool with the manager at the studio and was like, "Can you give this kid a chance?" Other than that, it's really hard to get a job at a studio. Like even as a graduate of an audio school, it's difficult. So being somebody who doesn't know anything, you gotta either be an amazing salesman and to sell yourself to the manager, or you gotta have a really good connection, or you just have to be really lucky. So that's the thing that I say now. A lot of studios only will look for interns from the schools where there's people graduating from audio, because when you leave an audio school, and I tell the students this all the time, like as an audio engineer, you suck. Like you're terrible. It's just the truth. Like you're horrible. Like you're a terrible engineer. But I don't have to explain to you what an XLR is. You know what a compressor looks like. If
Right.
I say grab the LA2A and bring it into the other room, you know which one I'm talking about, right? So I feel like when you leave from an audio school, you have a really good understanding about what all this stuff does and how it works. However, your technique is atrocious, right? So what you're gonna get, and people just like that, they laugh. They're like, "Oh, well, how can you say that?" But because it's true. Because I was an audio student and I've taught audio students, and it doesn't matter how much I say it. Like when you leave, you suck. Like you're terrible. It takes experience. It takes a lot of time to do this. And I'm not saying that to discourage anybody or to just like crap on people's, learning process, but it's just certain things you're going to have to go through. You're going to have to mess up. You're going to have to lose a vocal. You're going to have to drop a hard drive. You're going to have to drop a mic. Like all those things are going to happen to you for you to know, like, okay, I put the mic clip on first. Okay, I'm going to bring the mic stand first. Okay, I'm not going to attach the cable to it before I place it on the thing. All those things have to happen to you. So, and that only happens to you when you're working in the field, right? Because at the school, it's like kid gloves. There's a teacher there and they're kind of walking you through it. So, my answer to that is it's not required. You can learn how to do this by yourself. It's just going to take you a lot longer. Going to a school gives you a bit of a leg up. It also gives you, placement departments like people like myself trying to help the graduates actually find work. I used to tell people when I first graduated Full Sail was great. I learned a lot, but the most important thing to me at Full Sail was Full Sail's placement department. They really helped me get my foot in the door.
Wow.
And I think that is probably the part that is maybe not mentioned in the materials when they're trying to sell you. I'm going to school, show you the gear. They talk you about teachers, but that placement department, that's where the money's at. Like that's really like what you're paying for. You're paying for that shot to get your foot in the door, and that's my take. And anybody can fight me if they want.
Wow. So my take on, especially like when we're in that clubhouse room, and sometimes the clubhouse room turns into a free for all, but
Yeah.
but my take on that was, education is very important, but you know the school, sometimes people link education and schooling, correlated with each other, and really it's not. You can be so self-educated. I mean, you can graduate from YouTube University and like legit in the area that you are studying in, the same amount of time, if not more, than you would spend studying material in a school, you could from YouTube or online, and you really could have that education. But a lot of people think it's synonymous with actually going to a school like Full Sail, and to have that experience. And one experience I know for me that was life changing was when I actually started working with artists. I didn't go to Full Sail or anything, but it
Mhm.
wasn't it's different when you learn music or you make music for yourself, and then you actually have to work with somebody, and they have an expectation, and that expectation is the basis for every decision you're going to make, even from how quick can you open up your DAW, or how quick can you set up a microphone, so it was really good hearing your take saying that. And I never knew that Full Sail had a placement department.
Yeah, most for-profit schools, if they're accredited, like if they can give out some sort of a degree, they have to have a placement department.
Wow.
It's a requirement because you have to prove that people aren't just giving you money for no reason. Like there has to be value, and the way that most states and throughout the country, as far as the education department is concerned, the only way that they can justify that is by proving that if you come here and you spend all this money, you're going to learn something that you're going to be able to use to make a living off of. That's really what they want to see, and that's why most for-profit schools have a placement department because they need to. The government requires them, and they have to actually meet a certain amount of placements.
Wow.
So those people in those placement departments are working real hard to get you a job, um, post graduation. So because they have to prove that I don't know if a lot of people know that, and it's not a secret though. Like you can look it up, but it is a requirement. So most for-profit schools will have a placement department that helps. I mean, that's what I do now for SAE. Like I help them find their students work
Wow. So
because
let me
they have to.
let me ask you this. This is a good segue right here. So how do you go from being that engineer that graduated, that's working now in a studio, or this is like, you're just doing your thing. How do you go from that level to actually becoming an engineer, working with and getting these placements, with certain artists and certain labels, even other working with other studios here and there? How do you go from that ground level to the level, to where you're actually working with those artists?
So for me, like in my situation, it was just it was honestly, man, it was a couple of things. I was really fortunate. In the first place I did the internship, the guy who was my mentor and is still a really good friend of mine, we actually worked together a lot.
Hmm.
His name is Charles Dye. He was the engineer that engineered the first record that was done completely inside of Pro Tools. So up to this point, we're talking like 2000, so 1999, 2000. So up to this point, there had never been a number one record that was done entirely inside of Pro Tools. Like they would be like, oh, they recorded it in Pro Tools and they mixed it, on the
Yeah.
board, or they did some of the tracking in Pro Tools, but then they jumped. Like it was never done completely. And the very first record, I don't know if you remember. Do you remember the record "Living La Vida Loca" by Ricky Martin?
Yeah.
So
Living it.
that record,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Don't. So that record was the first record that was ever done completely inside of Pro Tools. Like they recorded it, they mixed it, he did everything inside of Pro Tools.
What?
So yeah, that's like one of the records, like records that it set, like one of the first it was the first time that a record went number one on Billboard and it was done completely inside of Pro Tools. So at that point Avid loved him. They were like, this guy's a genius, whatever, and he was their golden boy. And he worked a lot with Avid, or which at that time was Digit Design. So because of that, he was super into Pro Tools. So he really got me into Pro Tools and like quick keys. So 2001, like Pro Tools at that time, people were like, "Oh, it's not gonna stick around. This isn't gonna last. It's a fad." Like people literally would say, like Pro Tools is a fad. Like it's not. It
Right.
doesn't sound as good. It's never gonna last. Blah 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 blah. 20 years later, and here we are. Right.
Right.
What happened for me was Charles was like, I used to call him quick key Nazi. Like he would like literally sit next to me and watch me work and be like, "Why'd you do that? You took three extra steps. You could have done this quick key, or you could have done this." Or and it was just like this like boot camp kind of mentality that I had to go through with Pro Tools, because he felt that it really was the future, and he knew like if you know how to do this, you can just work forever. And he was right. So after my internship, I started working, and I just had a crazy leg up on most people because most of the big studios are already having Pro Tools, but I'm on there like I'm flying,
Right.
right? Like I'm just have this technical ability that was, I was trained to do, and I was able to execute it, right? So I had that part going for me. Um, and then the other part is, as a person, I'm really personable.
Mhm.
So I don't talk a lot, like except like on interviews like this. But in the studio, I was quiet. Hey, what do you want? I want to do this. All right, cool. Let me see how I can do that. And it was always like customer service. Like it was really basic, really straightforward. Like I'm not doing anything magical. I do have this skill that cuts down on a lot of time, which gives me time to be better at the other things that I'm not good at. And that's why when I talk to students or graduates or people who just recently graduated or people who are trying to figure this thing out, I'm like, figure out one thing that you could probably be really good at, right? And
Mhm.
nowadays, most of the time, I'm like, you could be really good at a DAW. You could be really fast at using a DAW. That's
Mhm.
not that hard. You could,
Right.
in 6 months, you could be flying on the DAW. You just have to practice every day. Maybe you're not the greatest mic pre-selector, all that stuff, but the time that you're going to save that session because of your speed in Pro Tools, you
Right.
could use it to do other stuff that you're not that good at.
Mhm.
Right? So if it takes you 20 minutes to set up the vocal mic, but the rest of the session is flying, nobody's gonna notice.
Right.
If it takes you 20 minutes to set up the mic and then the session is like running over, everybody's gonna be like, this person is not it. This engineer is too slow,
Mhm.
right? So I always tell people, figure something like, and I always recommend the DAW because it's easy. It just takes a computer. Figure out a DAW that you really like or the one that you're gonna be using locally in your city. Get really good at it and work on your customer service. everything else will fall into place. That's literally all I did. And word got around. There was this kid, Frank. He's super fast on Pro Tools, and he shuts up. Because that's a problem that a lot of people run into. Is like they'll become interns, they'll become assistant, and they have a lot of opinions. And it's like I tell my kids all the time, bro, nobody cares. Nobody cares. Like, do your job, do it amazingly. And when you get to that point where you're so good that people are like, yo, what do you think about this? Because they'll ask you.
Right.
They will straight up ask you, what do you think? And then you can share your opinion. And if your opinion is good and you have like a good idea, guess what? They're always going to come back to you and ask you again. But that unsolicited opinion that people like to share because they're in the control room, bruh, it's not it. That is not it. And it just sometimes will bring a session to a screeching halt. And you're like, what? Like, get this guy out of here. Like, I've had that happen with assistants where the artist is like, can you please get him out of here? Because, like, this is not it. So it's just stay in your lane, do your job really well, and just be patient a little bit, just a little bit, because it doesn't even take that much. Because you know how many crappy engineers? I'm sorry, I know I'm talking a lot, but this is really a passionate thing for me.
Yeah, no, this is good.
Do you know how many bad engineers there are in this world? There's a lot, right? So if you're that one engineer that's just good and you can just get along with people and you're gold. You're not even your phone's gonna ring off the hook. You're not gonna have time for yourself. And then once you get to that point, then you start picking and choosing and you start looking and go, okay, if I take this session, okay, this is a better session, this is going to lead me to this next thing or this next thing, and I can make connections here and start thinking a little bit more strategically. And next thing you know, you're doing really amazing stuff and getting to work on music you actually like. Because that's the other thing people don't realize. The beginning, you're working on music that maybe you don't really like. You're just kind of cutting your teeth and getting a paycheck, and it's cool, but it's when you get to work on music you actually like, that's like, it's super rewarding. And you'll look back and be like, this is how I got here. I know how I got here. It was through working hard and just being quiet, and that's super important.
So that's dope that you said that. I often get, it's not usually, I don't have an assistant. So usually the person who's talking the most or making the most nonsense or asinine remarks inside of a studio session is not the artist, but it's the guy who just came with the artist. And it's part of the reason why sometimes I hate editing or mixing anything with somebody in here, especially when you throw on a delay and you're just trying to get the timing right and you just opened up the delay and the first thing they say is like, oh no,
No, no, no, no, no, no.
that's not it. Yeah. And all you did was open it up. You didn't do anything yet. So it's like, I totally get what you're saying. It
Yeah,
throws the whole vibe off.
absolutely, absolutely. And if any artists watching this, like, I understand that is, maybe you rap and maybe you grew up rapping in front of your friends and getting that like instant reaction, and I understand the value of that, right? So a lot of people will, you know we grew up performing or singing in front of our friends, and that instantaneous reaction is important to us. And then so we feel like, yo, if I bring them to the studio, I got to bring these this is my vibe right here. I want to bring them along because they kind of inspire me and they kind of keep me moving. The studio is a different scenario, right? It's not that kind of feedback. It doesn't always work, right? Because let's say you're an artist and you come to my studio and we're recording, right? And you bring some of your friends and you do a punchline, and like you spit a bar, and they're like, yo, and I might be like, yo, that was good, but let's do it again, because maybe the performance wasn't it.
Right.
What you said was crazy. I love it. I'm gonna keep it. I'm gonna put it in the playlist. But I think you could deliver it better. Now I'm speaking from experience. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm trying to
Right.
make this a better record. I know that, yeah, the line is crazy, but it didn't sound as good. Your delivery wasn't there. You didn't have the energy. You just didn't have that oomph. To them, they're just hearing it as the bar, and they're like, "Yo, my man is crazy." You know what I'm saying? That's cool
Yep.
outside, but as a record, it doesn't survive.
You're saying a whole lot too, because for the artists out there, I really will hope that they hear this, because the reality of it is that thing that we're trying, that the place where we're trying to actually take the song is where you actually want it to be. But because, sometimes some things like that get in the way of us so much of doing it, when we give you the song or the song gets released and it's time for revisions and edits, the thing that needs to be edited and revised is the one thing that I was trying to fix in that moment. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and honestly, sometimes it's just experience. Sometimes people don't, they don't get it right away, or this is the way I've always done it, and I'm just gonna keep doing it, and that's cool. But there's just a certain level of, I guess there's just a certain level that once you have some experience, like making records and like making songs and completing them and having them out and then seeing what works, right? For the most part, because obviously there's things that people will do and you'll be like, this is crazy, this is never going to work, and then it works and you're like, oh man, that's crazy. um as engineers and as producers, as people who do this professionally, like your job is to listen to music and see, be like, oh, I know why that worked, or kind of like, oh, I can see what they did here and why like people like this or why people gravitate toward this. And that's literally all you're trying to do in your session. Like, yo, I think you should do it like this because X, Y, and Z. Like, this usually works. Or like, if you
Right.
have this much bass, it's not going to translate on the AirPods and it's going to be tough. And like all those little things that we learn is what we're trying to give to the artists. And sometimes when we make those suggestions, it's based off of like, I really want your record to work, and you know, genre and all that stuff. Like, this is what happens in your genre, and for people to accept it, especially when you're a new artist, it's tough. So having somebody who can guide you and be like, yo, if you really want this to work, let's why don't we try this, or louder, softer, whatever.
Right.
It's just that. It's just like, yo, I've seen what's working. I know what works. I know what has worked. We can try future things, but just there's a certain criteria that we're gonna have to hit, and that's all we're trying to do is just hit those criteria. So,
So let me ask you this. How important is it for networking for you at this stage of your career? Is networking a big part for you, or do you just try to, let your name speak for itself? So what's your take on networking?
no, networking is important, and it's always important. It might be, maybe you don't do it in the same way that everybody else does it. Like for me, my networking a lot still constitutes me just calling people on the phone, be like, yeah, what up, what's going on, and just staying in contact with people. Texting is cool. Um, and Instagram and social media, all that stuff is important. But I think it's really important that you also, obviously now with COVID, it's kind of difficult, but showing up to places, you know what I'm saying? Like going to events, go to your Grammy events in your city. Like there's
Right.
probably a chapter nearby, go to those things. Or if there's producer meetups or whatever those things are, even if you're not a producer, just go and be like, yo, I'm an engineer. I really like your beats. If you guys need studio time or whatever, you need mixing, just
Right.
like hit me up. You show your face a couple of times repeatedly, like you make connections with people, and that's all it is. And then like be useful to people. You know what I'm saying? Like if you're gonna go out and connect, be useful. Be like, oh, I have a studio, or oh yeah, I can mix that for you, or I know an artist I can sing that, or whatever. Like be useful, or just even give them information. Like I do these things where I do mix critiques like once a month. Like when
Hmm.
we go live and we do it, and I don't get paid for that. I'm just literally just passing along information, like helping you get to the next level. And in exchange, I keep meeting a bunch of new people who are making music. And hope my goal is to sometimes maybe connect two people together and be like, yo, you make this music, you should hook up with this person. And then, or I don't know, just connect people in any way. But that's how I do it. Everybody does it different, but I think it's extremely important. And I don't think you can ever rest on your laurels and just be like, oh, I'm this big, whatever. I don't have to. It's not true.
So let me
It's
ask you
crazy.
this. What does day to day look like for you now? Are you working on a lot of major records, or is your focus more on the education aspect of it? I see your Instagram all the time with your photos and stuff, and I'm just like, dang, his studio is nice. But besides, once I get over that, what is your day to day kind of looking like? Are you still educating a lot, or are you more so still producing a lot, engineering for the big placements and stuff like that?
So my most of my day is split up. Actually, my week is like chopped up a lot. So I spent a lot of time still working with students. That's really been my focus for a long time,
Mhm.
just because I feel like the information has to be passed on to
Right.
somebody, and somebody has to kind of keep running with this thing. I do work. I don't do as much major stuff on the Anglo side anymore. But I do more stuff on the Spanish, like the reggaeton stuff, like the Latin
Yeah.
side of
Okay.
things. I've been kind of ingraining myself in that world a little bit more. Um, I also try to work with local artists a lot. Um, just that was something like 10 years ago. Like I had lived in Miami at that point for 10, 11 years. And I was like, I've never worked with a local artist that actually did anything. So I kind of did like, I made it my little mission to like find artists that I liked and like work with them. So I've been doing that for the past 10 years. Like I'll find somebody and I'll be like, yo, you're cool. Let's like come by the studio. Let's do something. And they'll be like, well, how much are you going to charge me? And I'm like, nothing. Like, I just think your music's good and I think I can help you.
Right.
And it's literally that. Like I'll just form relationships with them and I'll make songs for them and I'll just like, kind of help them along and hopefully, it works out for them. But I know at least they'll get like some experience, learn a few things kind of, and then I just stay in contact with them and we talk and I just make relationships that I feel like could be fortunate for both of us at some point. But I'm never like looking like, yo, I'm gonna work with this person because they're gonna like. I'm like, yo, I think you're talented. I think that you have potential. I'd like to show you a few things, and hopefully we can make something cool.
Do
And
you
that's pretty much it.
do you have any courses out available or anything like that? Or are you more so okay? So you
I'm
just
more like
one on
it's
one.
like yeah, I like the one-on-one because everybody experience is different. Like I could make a video and be like, this is how you use a compressor.
Right.
And that's cool, but that I could only really show you maybe one or two situations. Like it's too general. Like I'd rather somebody hit me up and be like, "This is my problem. I'm recording vocals, and this is the mic that I have, and this is the compressor I have, and this is the kind of music I'm making, and this is the issue that I'm having." And then I could be like, "Okay, cool. This is what you should try, and maybe try this, and maybe let's move the mic here, and let's because like." And that's I don't have a problem with people doing the YouTube videos because they're super useful. One, because I'm
Right.
never gonna do them like
Yeah.
that,
Right.
so somebody has to do it. And I'm glad people are out there making them, and they're super useful. And honestly, like now when kids come to the school, they know a lot more.
Right.
Um, my only issue that is was when somebody watches one video and they're like, okay, I know how to mix a vocal now.
Oh
And it's
man.
like, no, you know how to mix that vocal.
Oh man.
You know how to mix that particular, you know how to make that particular sound. Like if somebody says no, do something else, you're stuck, right? Because like I showed, like sometimes the video shows you how to do something and doesn't show you why you do it, which is way more important, right?
Oh man.
So the why, the why will lead you down a path of furthering your knowledge. Like, why did I do this? Oh, I did this because of this. Why did I pick this compressor? Oh, because this one does this. Well, what is this other compressor doing? Why didn't I do that? That is way more important than, oh, if you put these 8 plugins and you do this delay, then you can do little baby vocals. And that's great if you're recording little baby. But
Right. And it's I'm getting excited because like legit that's like one of my pet peeves. And also that was something like I grew up, learning I teaching myself first before I asked anybody for a lesson or help. And it's like you
mhm,
use templates or you just use the same thing over and over and over. And now I laugh so hard, watching some of these videos sometimes because it's like the why is way more important sometimes than you even understanding that piece of gear, or you
yeah,
even understanding that plugin. Because if you don't understand like a threshold on a compressor, then it's like, I hope you didn't just slap on that thing on just any and everything, or a gate, even worse, you know what I'm saying? Because now you can't hear anything at some point. So it's like, understanding those things over time, they just become so funny watching some of these videos and tutorials. And like you said, some of them are extremely helpful, but the reason to why is actually more important. And you're not going to learn that reason why unless if you're in different scenarios, different problems, different voices, different levels, different that song might have a slamming 808, or a lot of mid-range stuff that you got to take a lot of the mid-range out of something else, but it's like that doesn't apply for every situation. Um,
Correct.
so so clearly you are an educator, and that's something that I just I really do love, because I feel like with the engineering side, um especially online and stuff, it's one thing to be able to do something, it's another thing to be able to communicate clearly exactly what you're doing. And that usually is the differentiating factor between, hey, I know exactly what I'm doing, or hey, I looked this up online at one point. So
Right.
I really
That's
do
true.
appreciate it. I really do appreciate that. So real quick, so how were you able to work with people like, Bad Boy and all of, the big namers? How what was your first time, or your most remarkable moment that you kind of remember? Hey, this is whose song, or I got to do this today. What story or what artist do you think you could tell us, which was like the most like remarkable for you?
I mean, there's been many remarkable moments, but just early on, like my first big break was like the bad boy thing, and that goes back to directly to the story I told earlier about Pro Tools, um, where I was people, Puff and his whole Hitman crew and all those guys, and obviously, um, they had worked with amazing engineers up to that point, and they came down to Florida and they kind of locked out Circle House, which is a big studio here in Miami, and they were auditioning engineers, and I got selected because of my speed in Pro Tools. And at first I was just like, just one of the guys in the rooms with the writers and just writing. And eventually, like, they were here for about 6 months, and within that first month people were just like, yo, have you worked with the kid upstairs? Because there was like a little like production room, and they're like, yo, have you worked with that kid? Like, we're like, people were knocking out like 4 or 5 songs in a matter of hours, because I was just like moving so fast on Pro Tools that they were just like, yo, they would be like, yo, copy the chord. I'd be like, I did it. Like, oh, and then double, yeah, I did it. Like, and like that, and the fact that I really like paid attention to music and understand music structure,
Right.
where they were like, yo, do this, and then I'll be like, yo, I got you, and then yo, the chord, I'll be like, yo, I already flew it, and they'll be like, oh, play it back. Oh, we're done. And I was like, yeah. And they were like, okay, all right, let's do another one. I'd be like,
All right, got
cool,
another.
boom. Yo, import this beats imported. I got the tempo, it's all locked. Yo, I could do the delays, and you know what I'm saying? Like all those little things. And it was just moving so fast for them. They weren't used to it. And they're like, yo, I'm coming up here. So then it comes a situation where people are like, yo, who's in Frank's room? And oh, I got it next. And then so then the producer like, yo, why is everybody going into, like, what is going on? So then they brought me downstairs to the big rooms, and now I'm working with the producers, and they're watching me. And I know how to lock up. Back then, remember, you had to lock up MIDI equipment and MPCs and MIDI time code, and I'm locking up the drum machine and Pro Tools, and I'm making it go. And they're just like, what the hell? Like, this kid's like, and then Puff, I get Puff in the room, and we're working, and he can we curse? We can't. Can we
Yeah,
curse?
go ahead, do your thing.
So I'm in the room. I'm in the room, and we working and we doing stuff. And he's like, "Woo! This is the fastest motherfucker in Pro Tools in the whole world." I was like,
And when
I didn't
Puff
want to say nothing,
and
but I'm like inside.
if Puff says that, you might as well write that down underneath my name when you say my name.
That was the super cosign. So now I'm like, I'm just like working, but in the inside, I'm like jumping up and down, like, yeah, Puff said I'm the fastest motherfucker in Pro Tools in the whole world.
Right, right, right.
And so that just became like, I just became an important aspect of that whole 6 months of them being there writing songs. And then at the end of the last day of the session, um one of the things that my mentor Charles was really strict about was file maintenance. He was
Mm,
really like, yo, because at that time it was a little bit different. Pro Tools, we didn't have 1 terabyte drives. A 9 gigabyte drive was a big drive. You know what I'm saying? So you had to really be like, yo, allocating space and doing all this stuff. And so I was helping them not only with the recording, but also with the organizing of the hard drives, like the
right.
backing up and doing all this stuff. and it's the last day of the session, and it's 6 a.m. and I'm upstairs in my little studio in the Circle House in the little production room, and I'm doing backups. I'm making sure everything's labeled, and Puff comes upstairs straight off, like just like in the Dave Chappelle skit, in a bathrobe with sunglasses on, and he's like, people. When I tell the story, nobody believes me. I'm dead ass. Like he had a bathrobe and sunglasses on and slippers, and was like, "What's up, Playboy?" And I was like, "What's up?" He's like, "What are you doing here?" I was like, "Oh, I'm just making sure all the files are here and just backing up some stuff." And he's like, "Where's everybody else at?" I was like, "I think everybody left." And he's like, "And the producers?" I was like, "Yeah, I think everybody's gone." He's like, "Are you the only one here?" I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Why?" I was like, "Because I need to finish and make sure that everything is there so that when you guys leave, you have all your files." And he was like, "I'm going to LA tomorrow. I need you to come with me." And I was like, yeah. He's like, I was like, "All I need is a bed." And he was like, "Ain't no sleep in that bad boy." And then he walked away, and I left the studio probably like 9 a.m. And at noon, I got a call that there was a plane ticket for me, that I just had to pick it up at the counter. And I left to LA that day, and I was in LA for another 6 months with him in his house,
What?
just working with him. Yeah. And then that from there on, it was it, because then I was like, I was Puff's engineer. And when I came back to Miami, they were like, "Yo, that's Frank. He's Puff's guy." And then every time Puff, for years, every time Puff would come to Miami, like they would call me. And that was really like my big break, because from then on, like I met more people, and I
Wow.
met other engineers and producers, and people would call me. And then the studios, obviously, they knew that I was always with Puff, so they would bring me on for other sessions. They'd be like, "Yo, this is Frank. He's Puff's engineer." And just through that, like I just got really busy, and then everything else kind of like just fell
Wow.
into place in the rest of my life. But that was really like my big, and it was just because of hard work and just being diligent. Like,
Right. I just got a whole gem from what you said. It was just about doing what you knew that you should have been doing at the time that you should have been doing it, and not cutting any corners, you know, left you in the studio when Puff walked in. And it's not like he just saw you. He saw you doing the right thing and the thing that nobody
facts.
else is going to do, like, because you're not cutting corners. Like that, man, that stuck with me, man, because I'm a stickler on dotting every I, crossing every T. But when you realize that there's like levels and the benefits behind just doing the right thing, it's nothing new, but it's just doing what you know you're supposed to do at the times that you're supposed to do it. You have no idea where that could lead you. So, man, that
Absolutely.
is awesome. All right, well, listen, man, we're gonna wrap up soon. Let me ask you this. I ask this question to every single person. If you were to be known for one thing, what would you want to be known for?
um I think if I'm going to be known for one thing, and it's something that I kind of just work on a constant basis, is giving people honest, um not advice, but just being honest about the knowledge and like what it takes to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I want people to always be like, "Yo, Frank never led me astray when it came to this." Like, because I love this. Like, I truly, and I tell people this, I yell it. I'm like, "Yo, I love this shit. Like, I love audio. I love recording. I love music. Like,
Right.
I really enjoy it." And I never want anybody to say, be like, "Yo, Frank gave me some bullshit information about like how to do this." Like, nah, Frank always is gonna give you the real on your situation, whether you like it or not.
Right.
I'm gonna tell you what it is about your situation. So if you
Facts.
ask me, so
Facts. All right, man. Well, Frank, well, where can people find you if they want to catch up with you or follow you?
man, you on Instagram, Twitter at Alphabet Music. I talk a little bit more on Twitter than I do on Instagram. I'm not super on there like that. It's not something that I'm old, man. I'm 43 years old. Like, I just honestly, like, I'm on there sometimes. I'm gonna say something and be like, man, nobody cares. Um, but yeah. And then if you need to get a hold of me, you can send me an email at mix@alphabetmusic.com. That's my company, Alphabet Music. So if you look up alphabetmusic.com, there's a page there. You want to send me an email, get in contact with me, hit me up. And then look out for me on the social sites. I always post when I'm doing my mix critiques. I do them once a month. And then also I do different like mix courses through Music Expo. We did one in January. It was a week long. We took 20 guys, And it was a week-long course where we mixed one song for an entire week, and I went through all
Wow.
the steps. And it was cool, man. It was a really cool, and we limited the amount of people so that it could be like real personal with everybody in there. And we did 5 days.
Wow.
You know, we skipped days throughout the week, so we do like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then we did Saturday and Sunday to wrap everything up. I had the artists come in and talk to us about the record, and then listen to the mix, and then kind of explain the whole process. So it was a really really cool experience for a lot of people, and I still talk to them. We opened up a Discord, everybody's on there, we still talk, and it was just really cool, man. It was just really cool walking people through like the entire process, like step by step, like this is what I do here, and then trying as much as I can, and I know I'm talking a lot again, trying to explain as much as I can the whys, and showing them, look, I can do this with any plugin, but this is why I'm doing it.
Right. Right. Well, Frank, once again, thank you so much for jumping on with me on today. Really do appreciate your knowledge, your experience, and I really do thank you for everything that you do for the audio community. I go by the name of Keef. Keyz. If you would, please like, subscribe to this channel, comment below, hit the notification bell for more videos like this, and we will see you on another video. One.
Thank you.